What has happened to the weather? It is awful out there. It's 6:05 in the morning, just about daylight. Used to be daylight at 4 o'clock in the morning a few weeks ago. Now look at it. The wind is dreadful. All night we've had rampant wind and lashing rain. It is horrible out there. The poor old flag, well, it's wrapped around the pole, soaking wet. Oh, there's a little bit of it flapping. A dreadful wind from the west. 18 centigrade, 64 Fahrenheit, 94% humidity. I'm surprised it's not 194%. 1001 millibars on the barometer. And it is just horrible out there. It really is. I don't know what's happened to our summer. This is August, normally the best month. It is worse up north, though. From the weather reports I've seen, they've got it far worse up north than we have down here on the south coast. I do feel for all of you up north there with this awful rain. And tonight, apparently, today, funnily enough, brilliant sunshine all day today, and then tonight we're back to this sort of weather again. I don't know what's going on. Did this happen when I was a boy? I don't remember this sort of weather on my school summer holiday. Perhaps I'm looking at the past through, rose-tinted glasses or something. When I was a boy, every day, every summer day was beautiful. The birds were singing, the sun was shining, and we were all carefree. Right, now I've woken up from that dream. How are you all? How are you doing? Hope the weather's all right where you are. Well, I know it's not here in the UK, but wherever you are in the world, I hope the weather's okay. Do you remember last Wednesday on the midweek message, I said, jokingly, what we'll do this Sunday is have an hour's worth of talking about the things I don't like. As I said on Wednesday, Tricia is always saying to me, why don't you list the things you do like? Because that will take about 30 seconds. Listing the things you don't like will take an age. I don't know what she's talking about. What is she implying? Thank you for all your emails. Lovely to hear from you. I think I've answered them all now. I try not to miss any out. If you want to say anything, it's rants@protonmail.com. Be good to hear from you. I've already done the weather report, but I've just got to say, looking at the tree out of the front window here, the cherry tree, it looks like it's going to blow over. It really does. The wind is that fierce. And it's dark and gloomy. As my mum always said, no point in moaning about something that you can't do anything about. I can't do anything about the weather, so let's move on from that. I don't believe this weather. I've just been out in the garden. The sun is shining, the wind has dropped, blue sky, and it's, where are we? Just coming up to 9 o'clock. So within an hour or two, it's changed completely. They said it would. That's amazing. They normally lie like a cheap watch. When I was in the garden, I had a tomato. I'm always picking the tomatoes off the vine. Is it the vine? I never did find out. Or the plant. What a wonderful taste. Amazing taste. In fact, I mentioned that the other day, and I've just had an email from Kerry. Hello, Kerry. She says she spends a lot of time walking around the garden picking things that she's growing, such as tomatoes, gooseberries. Oh, I haven't grown gooseberries for years. They're lovely. They're hairy, aren't they? They've got little hairs on them. And what else has she put here? Raspberries. Yeah, our raspberries are finished now. Black currants. I like black currants. Anything, as she says, anything picked straight from the garden tastes totally different from the stuff you get in the supermarket. So that's what I was doing in the garden. I was eating tomatoes. They reckon that storm Lillian, that's what it was that we had, storm Lillian. They were saying on the forecast earlier, I don't know whether they're talking about tonight, but it's going to cause flooding and travel disruption across Britain. So is that tonight or was that last night? I don't know. I opened up our hedgehog hole in the fence the other day. It's been blocked off for a few years. We did have 3 hedgehogs visit the garden every evening, every night. They'd be out there munching away at the food we've left out for them. In the summer we have the bedroom window open and we could hear them munching and scuffling about. They're very, very noisy creatures. Then one morning, out in the road, we found a splatted hedgehog. He'd been run over. It was quite sad because we were sure it was one of our hedgehogs. And the other 2 didn't turn up. None of them turned up anymore. So I don't know, perhaps the other 2 perhaps it was a family, and they were distraught and they didn't turn up anymore. And we haven't seen a hedgehog in the garden, or we saw one about a year ago. But now I've opened up that hole in the fence. I blocked it because of cats. cats would come in through the hole and muck around in the garden. And now, of course, we've got cats back in the garden, but I want the hedgehogs to come back. I also want the foxes. We've got a lot locally. I wouldn't mind the foxes coming in. I like the foxes. I think the cats are just something we'll have to put up with. The trouble is they dig up everywhere and poo everywhere. Before I forget, several of you emailed. Was it Bob, John, Ian, Dave, quite a few of you, about, the background noises I did. I was wading through water and walking through a field in the rain with the thunder roaring above me. Quite a few of you have emailed and said that is rather good because it opens up your imagination. You can picture me wading through water as I'm talking to you. You can picture me wandering through the field, the long grass, the pouring rain, the thunders going in the background. So that's, even though it's all false, all done by smoke and mirrors, well, not exactly smoke and mirrors, but almost, perhaps I will just do the odd one. I don't want to annoy people. I'm always very aware of upsetting people, offending. In this day and age, so many people are so easily offended. So I have to be a little bit careful. I don't know whether you follow the news here in Britain, wherever you are around the world, but people have been locked up in prison now for hurty words or something on Facebook and Twitter and whatever. So if you put something on there that's slightly, what's the word I don't know, slightly inappropriate or rude or whatever, you end up in prison. So I mustn't say things like the birds back in the 1960s in their mini skirts look really sexy, because that's offensive. I've upset people. So I didn't say that. That was an example. That's not what I think at all. Happy days. Talking of the 1960s, back then you could say what you like. It was a free country, free speech. We used to, I think I've told you before, friends and I used to hang out of the car window shouting at the girls as we drove along, and they'd shout back. They were as bad as us, a lot of them, or as good as us, depending on which way you look at it. They were good times. I can't tell you what we shouted out of the car window, and I certainly can't tell you what some of the, what shall I call them, young ladies, used to shout back to us. But it was all good fun. It was, I don't know, it was youngsters, it was teenagers enjoying life, I'm just checking emails. Yes, it was Bob. Hello, Bob. Bob says, I do like it when you beam yourself to another place with background noise. It paints a picture in the mind. That's it. That's true. That's what a lot of people are saying, Bob. Also, we called chipboard particle board, but now I call it bits and pieces board. Yes, bits and pieces. Right, that's something we were discussing on email. But yes, it paints a picture in the mind. You can use your imagination. This is what a lot of people have said. But I promise I won't keep doing that. The trouble is now, the next time I do go anywhere with my little recorder, you'll all be saying, oh, is that real? He's probably sitting in his high-tech studio. He's not near that airport at all. He's not down by the sea at all. Oh, here we go, a Met Office. Yellow warning for London and South East England between 0600 hours. Oh, I see, 6 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. Rain, heavy at times, likely to cause some travel disruption and perhaps flooding in a few places. Bus and train services probably affected, with journey times taking longer. Spray and flooding on the roads probably making journey times longer. A small chance of flooding of a few homes and businesses. A small chance of some interruption to power supplies and other services. Then there's a thing you click here, what should I do? What should I do? Well, it's going to rain. What do you want about what should I do? There's a whole list of things, what you should do when it's raining. Right, okay, don't go and stand naked in the middle of the road. No, it doesn't say that at all, really. But they talk about this nanny state, don't they? It's going to rain quite hard. There might be big puddles. Read the government information on what to do to keep yourself safe. Stone the crows. Oh, and apparently that's tomorrow, so 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Oh, well, we shall see what happens. We will probably find that instead of all this flooding and rain, there'll be a heat wave tomorrow. As someone said to me the other day, the trouble is with weather forecasts, it's rather like the boy who cried wolf. We get these email warning type messages from the Met Office. There's going to be floods and disruption and this happens and that happens. And we just get a little bit of rain. When there's some serious stuff on the way, they're going to say, oh, there'll be flooding and this could happen and that could happen. And you'll probably find people who take no notice of it. Oh, here we go again, it's going to rain. The boy who cried wolf. My grandfather told me what that meant when I was about 8 years old. I forget what it was. I'd said something that made him think of the boy who cried wolf? I won't relate the story because you probably know that. He was crying wolf when there wasn't a wolf. Then when there was a wolf, no one took any notice of him. And I'd said something to my grandfather. Anyway, that was that. He explained what the boy who cried wolf meant. Just going back to chipboard, you know, the big sheets of chipboard in the UK. I was asking what you call it in other countries. So it was Bob in America said they call it particle board. I thought I'd better explain that. Otherwise you'll be thinking, what's he on about chipboard for? Was it last Sunday or the one before? We were talking about furniture, weren't we? How nicely it was made, how well it was made back in the old days, and how cheap and nasty and horrible it is these days. Who thinks we should compile a list of things that we're not allowed to say, things that are not politically correct these days? Shall we make a list? Email me with your thoughts on that. raiserants@protonmail.com. So just jot down a few things, make a little list of things that are not politically correct these days and that might offend people. That'd be quite good. I shall read them out and I'll probably get arrested. I wonder whether some of the old sayings, such as, I'll have your guts for garters. Do you remember that one? I'll have your guts for garters. Well, that implies cutting someone up, taking their guts out and making garters out of them. Are we allowed to say that today? I wonder how far back that saying goes, where that came from. I've just looked it up. It's awful. It's to disembowel someone and use their intestines to hold up your stockings. Well, that's not very nice, is it? Something that's just come to my mind is the little nursery rhyme, Ring a Ring of Roses. Do you remember that? Pocket full of posies. That apparently comes from the days of the Great Plague. The ring of roses represents red marks or lesions which show up like rings on the skin, which is associated with the bubonic plague. The posies in the pocket full of posies, they're the herbs and flowers people carried to ward off the disease. And a tissue is a symptom of the plague. It's awful, isn't it? It's a child's nursery rhyme. Finally, the falling down, we all fall down, that's death of the plague victim. Quite a few of the early nursery rhymes were about dreadful things, so I don't know why children were singing them. We'll probably find that nursery rhymes are banned next, once people find out what they really mean. Oh, we can't have that. They're banned. Anyone that sings a nursery rhyme, right, that's it, banged up, 5 years in prison. Got to do a shout out. Hello, Danielle. You want me to give a shout out to your mum? I've said before about shout outs, this isn't a radio station. Perhaps we should put it on the air. I've got several transmitters here. Find an illegal pirate transmitter amongst all my bits in the loft. Plug it into the mixer here and we'll put it out on the air. Radio Ray's Rants, that would be good. Anyway, Danielle, your mum, Brenda. Big shout out to Brenda. Hello, Brenda. Glad that you enjoy listening to the podcast episodes. And apparently Brenda has been listening since day one. That's good. That's 5.5 years, is it now? A friend of mine the other day, he said, what are you up to? And I said, I'm going to start the podcast for Sunday, the hour-long one, well, 50 minutes, hour-long. And he said, what do you find to talk about every week? I said, well, basically, I just sit there and talk rubbish. That's my friend Nick and Anne. I don't know whether you're listening. Big shout out to Nick and Anne anyway. It's now 26 degrees out there. 26 degrees. Can you believe it? Which is good. I'm not complaining. I like a bit of warmth. I don't like it too hot. One year out on the patio, which is under the roof, it was 45. No, yes, it was 45 degrees. 45. It was too hot. I couldn't sit there in that sort of heat. I've never been a sunbather. I don't like just sort of sitting in the sun. When you were a child, did you get sunburnt? We did sometimes get sunburnt. We didn't have the factor 50 stuff, whatever they put on people now. We'd be out in the garden. It would be a lovely day. We'd be in our swimming trunks or whatever, playing around in the garden. At the end of the day, we were sunburnt and we'd have to have calamine lotion put on. That pink stuff looks like window-lean. I'm sure the summers were hotter and longer back then in the 50s, in the 60s. So many people say, no, you just remember the good bits. You don't remember the rain during the school summer holidays. I do remember the rain. We did have rain, of course, but not as much as we do now. A few of us kids in the woods, we built a camp deep in the bushes with a secret entrance. We'd got this old tarpaulin, this canvas thing, I think one of the lads must have nicked it from his dad's shed or garage or something. And we built this camp and we cut branches down with our sheath knives, because we all had sheath knives then. And we cut branches down and camouflaged the whole thing. And it was great. We had like a ground sheet in there and torches and things like that. And I do remember being in there, going over to the woods, into the camp with some of the other lads. And we're sitting in there and it's pouring with rain, because I remember hearing the rain on the canvas and on the branches that we put over it all. No one ever found that. We never had anything. We'd leave our bits and pieces in there. Never had anything stolen. No one ever went in there. It was that well camouflaged. It was lovely. That was the sort of thing kids did, wasn't it? I'm not going to go on about the woods again, don't worry, but that's the sort of thing kids did back then. Whereas I don't know what they do now. Do you remember I was talking about Wales the other day? Betsy Coed, I was saying what a lovely place it is. Hello, Bruce, over there across the pond in America. Bruce has been to Betsy Coed and he loved it. It is a nice place, Bruce. As you say, it's lovely. I like the whole of North Wales, from kind of the middle up. To be honest, I shouldn't say that. I've never been down the south. I've never been down that bit. But North Wales, Llandudno, well, they say Llandudno, is that right? Llandudno. I stayed up there for 3 months back in 1970. Where would that be? 75, I believe. And of course, we drove around the place looking at all different places. It was lovely. Betsy Coed with the waterfalls, the countryside. I don't like mountains, but I do like the countryside, the waterfalls. So nice to hear from you, Bruce. Yeah, what a coincidence. You've also been to Betsy Coed on one of your UK trips. Anyone living in Wales listening to this, what does Betsy Coed mean? What does that translate into? A beautiful place, I would imagine. That's my guess. If you know, let me know what Betsy Coed means. Raise rants at protonmail.com. And it's now time for lunch. Fresh tomatoes from the vine, homemade bread, cheese and tomato sandwich. I'm starved. See you in a minute. I don't know about see you in a minute. It's now 24 hours later. Bit longer than a minute. It's the next day. And guess what? Where are we? 9 o'clock. It is lashing with rain. Lashing with rain. This is the bank holiday weekend. Do you have bank holidays abroad? Saw my mum this morning and she was talking about the bank holiday weekend. So everyone's off work Monday. Well, I say everyone. A lot of people obviously still have to go to work. So do you have bank holidays in other countries? I wonder, or is it just some sort of weird British thing? So it's pouring with rain. It's been raining all night. It seems to be never ending, this weather. I don't know what's happening. And again, I know I keep on about the weather forecast, but honestly, they do lie. They tell blatant lies. The other day, bank holiday weekend is going to be lovely. It's going to be nice. The rain will stop. It's going to be a nice sunny bank holiday weekend. Well, this is the Saturday and it's lashing with rain. And I think it's going to be all day. So that's a load of rubbish. Just a total change of subject. Well, there is no subject really, is there? I'm lurching from one thing to another. I'm going to lurch again to Bletchley Park. Is it in Buckinghamshire? Milton Keynes, Bletchley Park, the Enigma code breaking place in the war years. Do you remember? We don't remember it, but do you know of it? We went there. We went and stayed for a couple of nights, I think it was, quite a few years back now. And it was very interesting looking at the Enigma machines and all the information about it, all the equipment there, the huge, the Colossus computer with hundreds of valves all lit up, tubes as you call them in America. The other day I was given a radio, a wartime type radio, and I've been reading up about it. I'm restoring it. It's a shortwave radio basically. It does the AM band, medium wave that is, and shortwave. And I'm restoring it and I've actually got it working, and I was trying to find some history on it. Now, they were used for various different things during the war years, and I believe this one may have been used at Bletchley Park. When we were up there, I saw these identical radios. There were several of them there. Bletchley Park was, I think, known as Station X. Then they had Y stations, which were nerds like me at home, radio amateurs, radio hams at home, and they were given a receiver like this one I've got, or other makes and models similar. And what they did was, these people that knew Morse code, like I do, they wrote down, they tuned around, found Morse code stations from Germany, wrote it down. Now, it didn't matter I've done this. It doesn't matter that I can't speak German or French or Swedish or whatever. When I'm receiving Morse code, I just write it down. The letters, it doesn't matter whether it's a foreign language or not, if you see what I mean. So I'm writing down German, for example. I don't speak German, I can't read it, but I write all the words down. And that is all spelt correctly and everything, and it makes proper sentences. Well, presumably it does if the person sending it is doing it properly. So what a person like me would have done, I'd be at home with my receiver, and I'd tune into these Morse code stations, and I'd write down all the information, the time, the frequency, the date, and then all the text that the Morse code was. And then that would be picked up by a courier on a motorbike. He'd come and pick that up and take it to Bletchley Park, where they've got all the text written in German. They would then decode that. And I just find that all very interesting. I'd like to go to Bletchley Park again, but it was a long drive. It's, I think it's Buckinghamshire, isn't it? Milton Keynes, north of London. It's up the M1. And I remember coming back on the M1, 5 lanes of traffic, 20 miles an hour, then stop. Then we all take off a bit up to 50 miles an hour. Then it all slows and we stop again. I don't want that. I'm not too old. I was going to say I'm too old to drive that far. I'm not too old. I just can't be bothered with it all, to be honest. But I would like to go to Bletchley Park again. Look it up on the internet if you've never heard of it. So it's quite interesting that I've got this radio. There are various things about it from what I've read, various things about my particular radio that link it to the Bletchley Park, the Y stations as they were called. I find all that very interesting. Of course, when they were writing down the German from the Morse code, they're writing it down on the special forms they were given, the sheets of paper. They'd fill it all in with the info. It wasn't sentences. It was, for example, groups of 5 letters. You get the first group of 5 letters, then another group, then another group. And that was the code. You had to decode that and make it into sentences, which Alan Turing and his mates, they did that. There was a film about it, which is a very good film. I forget what it was called. Isn't it hopeless forgetting things? I'll remember in a minute, or I'll look it up in a minute, then I'll tell you. I'm looking at this radio now, and to think that people used that during the war years. There are pictures, I've got a load of photographs that I took, and there are a lot on the internet, of young women, headphones on, in front of these very radios, listening, tuning around, listening to enemy transmissions, writing down, they had to learn Morse code, all the young women, writing down what they were receiving. And it's quite amazing looking at this radio, thinking that this could very well be one used at Bletchley Park or one of the Y stations. The film was called The Imitation Game. Have a look at that if you're able to. I think you can probably find it on the internet. Can you watch films anywhere in the world now these days? Look that one up, The Imitation Game. It's a very good film. Obviously, war is terrible. What was everyone saying after the Second World War? Never again, never again. And look what's going on now all over the world. Terrible though it all was, there were a lot of people doing interesting things behind the scenes. As I said, someone like me at home, sitting in his room, writing down the text as he listened to Morse code through your headphones. And even perhaps the chap's wife wouldn't know what he was doing. Oh, he's on his amateur radio gear, he's playing around with that. He's listening to Morse code. They didn't know, apparently. They didn't tell anyone. So someone like me in my street, no one would know what I'm doing, but I am playing a very important part in the war effort. Talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was saying that it's really good that people like me are restoring these old pieces of wartime radio equipment. And also, like my brother-in-law, who is into military vehicles, he's got an American Willys Jeep. He's got a Vauxhall, 1940s Vauxhall staff car, which was used in the war, various other things like that. And his mates, they restore tanks. They've got tanks and huge armoured vehicles and all this stuff. And it's good that people are restoring this and looking after it for future generations to have a look at. It's not only military radio equipment, military vehicles. For example, on the Isle of Wight, we went to a museum, a marine type museum, and there's a ship's bell there. which was on a ship that went down back into 1700 and something. Divers have been down to the wreck. They've rescued the bell. It's been cleaned up and it's now on show for everyone to see. It's all part of our history, isn't it? There are cannons and cannonballs there that they've got from various ships that have been on the seabed for hundreds of years. All these artefacts. I find it interesting anyway. I know some people don't. Some people aren't bothered. Each to their own, I suppose. Complete and utter change of subject now. Hello, Julie. Email from Julie. How are you doing? Nice to hear from you. Where are you? Devon. Yeah, Devon. Oh, lovely. Lovely down in Devon. I love the West Country. Julie says, did your dad have a favourite armchair? Or your granddad or your great-granddad? My dad didn't, actually, Julie. No, he didn't have a favourite armchair. But a lot of dads did. I know that. A lot of dads had their, especially in the 50s, their armchair by the coal fire in the winter, you know. They've got their newspaper and they're puffing away on their pipe and the kids are playing on the floor. You set the scene in your email. I know all that. It's lovely. It brought back memories from the 50s for me. Not that my dad sat in an armchair by the fire smoking a pipe. He smoked cigarettes. Everyone smoked cigarettes in the 50s and the 60s and probably into the 70s. I remember back then, if you didn't smoke, you were kind of weird. These days, if you smoke, you're kind of weird. How things change over the decades. But yes, my grandfather, he had a favourite chair in his dining room, not in the lounge, but in the dining room, where he would have at, I think it was 2 o'clock every afternoon, this is when he was retired, he would go in there for 40 winks. Now, what does 40 winks mean? I don't know where that comes from. It means asleep. These days, I think we call it a power nap. I sometimes have a power nap about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I just come over tired. I know why. It's not that I'm old. It's that I get up about 100 times in the night to go to the bathroom because of various problems, you know. So I don't sleep properly. So sometimes I'll have a power nap, only for half an hour during the afternoon. Then I'm revived, batteries recharged, ready to go. I have a favourite armchair. And the other day, Trish was sitting in it. I went into the lounge and I said, you're in the boss's chair. She said, I am the boss. There's no answer to that, is there? Another change in direction. They were talking about processed food on the telly the other day. Now, basically, from what they were saying, processed food is anything, any food that's been mucked about with. So if you take an apple from a tree and eat it, that's not processed at all. Cheese is processed because it was milk. And then they muck about with the milk, then they make cheese and they muck about with that. It's quite interesting because they reckon that a lot of this processed food, they add stuff to it, don't they? Chemicals, hormones, or I don't know about hormones. Chemicals to make it not go off and chemicals to make the colour look a little bit better. And is it hormones? They did mention hormones. I'm sure they don't add hormones. Perhaps I misheard that bit. Mind you, they give animals, don't they? Cows and chickens, they give them hormones. So I suppose you are eating the hormones. But they were saying that a lot of the illnesses people have these days, not all illnesses, obviously, but some illnesses can be caused or made worse with this processed food. I don't know whether I've mentioned this before, but I don't eat anything that's been mucked about with too much. Yes, I have cheese, so that is processed. But I don't have all this other stuff that has been messed about with and things added to it. Almost anything you buy these days has been processed somewhere along the line. And there was a lady on there that they were talking to, and she was saying that she avoids all processed food. So even cheese, everything. And she's very healthy. She doesn't get ill. She doesn't get colds. Now that's interesting. Hasn't seen her doctor in years. So it just made me wonder, because I was talking to my mum about this morning. We go round there on a Saturday, as you know, for an hour or so. Trish does housework for her. I have coffee and we have a quick chat. And she was talking about the 40s and the 50s when she was a young woman. And there was very little in the way of processed food. You go to the greengrocer and buy the fresh vegetables. You go to the butcher, you buy fresh meat. It hasn't been mucked about with. They didn't inject animals with hormones and weird stuff like that. It was all basic, fresh food. I don't know why I'm going on about that. I think what it is, a lot of people at the moment that I know are ill. They've got various health problems. I've had a bit of a cough recently, but that's a cold. I've got this prostate thing, which is nothing. All old men get that, don't they? That just means I have to keep getting up in the night. I don't look upon that as an illness. But I do know a lot of people, they've got various problems, health problems. And I just wonder, is it because they eat a lot of this stuff? And I don't eat that. I avoid it. I've avoided it all my life, basically. Just a thought, isn't it? Just a thought. Just had another one of these spam or phishing type emails. Been looking at your website and we could get you more clients. We can increase your turnover and bring you more money. My website doesn't bring money. I don't have clients. It doesn't earn money. They're saying, this chap on here is saying, I've looked at your website, find it very interesting. I like the layout, good content, but you need to do this and that to get more people spending money with you. Well, had he looked at my website, idiot, he'd realise I don't take money. It's not a sales type website. They've got these standard emails, haven't they? They send out to everyone. Talking of spam stuff and fraud and all that, years ago, I'm going back 20 years, chap knocked on the door and he said, do you want to change your gas supplier? We can do you a special deal, blah, blah, blah. So to get out of that, otherwise they go on and on, I said, sorry, I don't live here, I'm just doing some work here. And he said, oh, are the people out there? I said, yes, they're out at work. And he said, oh, okay, can I just have your name just to put down on my form, just that I can say that I've called at the house? So I made up a name, I forget what it was, probably sort of Fred Smith or something. And off he went. I didn't even mention it to Trish because I thought there's no point when she got in from work, there's no point in mentioning that. A week or so later, we had a letter from this gas supplier saying, thank you for joining up with us, Mr. Fred Smith, blah, blah, blah. It had all been transferred over to this other gas supplier in the name of Fred Smith. Well, there was no Fred Smith. And, we had a hell of a job trying to put it all right again. We did in the end. It was only when, Trish was on the phone, it was only when she said, this is fraud to this company. Yes, okay, well, we'll have to sort this out for you. But that's awful. The chap should have been not only sacked, but done for fraud, I would have thought. Back in the old days, we didn't have that. You didn't have different gas suppliers. You had the gas company, the electricity company. That was it. You didn't have all these other suppliers. The telephone company, the General Post Office, the GPO, they supplied your telephone. You didn't have other telephone companies coming along and saying, oh, we can do you a better deal. And another thing that's happened recently, these nectar points you get, is it with Sainsbury's or whatever? Trish collects nectar points all year, and then come December, the C word, I won't mention the C word, or the 25th, she'll do the shopping just before the big day and use up all her nectar points. Well, she was looking on her nectar card thing. Nectar points, 0, you haven't got any. What? She had about 70 quid's worth. Where have they gone? Someone had got into the system somehow, apparently it's quite common, and they go and spend all your nectar points. She's got them back now, but again, we didn't have all that nonsense in the old days. And what it does, it causes stress. It gives people anxiety. Oh, my nectar points have gone. I was saving that up for December. They worry about it, especially people that are getting old now, elderly people. They don't understand it all. Where have they gone? Well, someone spent them. Well, how could they? We didn't have all that stress back then, all that anxiety caused by these crooks and villains and spam people and hacking type people. And when people say, oh, it was a lot more relaxed back in the good old days in the 50s, other people will argue, oh, well, it wasn't relaxed. You had to work hard. Look at Monday wash day. The poor housewife, she'd spend all day doing the washing by hand. It wasn't relaxing at all. Yes, that's true, but there wasn't all this extra added stuff. You pop into your local bank with a problem, something you might want to ask them, or you want a loan or whatever, and you'd have a chat to the staff or make an appointment to see the bank manager. There is no local bank now, it's all gone. You take a parcel round to your local post office to be posted off. There is no local post office, it's gone. You have to go miles. So yes, back in the old days, it was hard work, but there wasn't all this added stress. You didn't have broadband suppliers and other suppliers coming along and saying, oh, you don't want to be with them. Our broadband is so much faster than theirs and we can do you a special deal. You don't want all that. Just want your broadband. Of course, back then there wasn't broadband, so that's another stress and anxious type thing taken away. Same with TV, subscribe to us. No, come and subscribe to us. We've got these films. Oh, it just goes on and on. Mobile phone, we can offer you a better deal. What deal do you want? Oh, no, you don't want to be with them. Come with us. We can do you a special deal. We didn't have mobile phones. You just had a phone at home, which was supplied by the GPO. And you got a bill every quarter or whatever, and you pay your phone bill, along with the electricity bill and the gas bill. Simples. And all these adverts on TV these days about switching your various accounts. It just gives people a headache. I know many, many people that have said, oh yes, I could switch to this or that. I would save money. But do you know what? CBA can't be bothered. So when you hear someone arguing about the old days, oh no, it wasn't relaxed at all. It was all hard work. Yes, physical hard work, yes. But mentally, you didn't have all this other, I nearly swore then, I mustn't swear, all this other stuff chucked in at you, all this mental stuff. Don't go with them, come with us. Come and spend your money here. We've got special deals. Come here, we've got a discount. It's all a load of rubbish, isn't it? The adverts that I find funny, well, not funny, sad really. We are here to save you money. No, you're not. You're here to make money. They're not in business, are they? To save me money. They're in business to make money. Idiots. What do they think we are? Fools? I feel sorry for some of these people that have lost their life savings. I mean, on the one hand, it's their fault for being stupid. On the other hand, it's easy to fall for this stuff. You get an email from someone, say a family member, oh, I'm stuck. Could you send me a few £100? I'm stuck. I've lost my wallet. I've done whatever, And the person will think, oh, that's my poor brother. That's my poor daughter. They send money. Of course, it's not your brother or your daughter at all. It's just some idiot stealing from you. Then there's this other thing about you meet someone online, a dating thing or whatever, and you think you're falling in love, and they say, look, we must meet up at some stage. I'm a bit stuck. I've got this business, and I need a sort of £5,000 injection into the business. They come out with all this rubbish. So the person will send them £5,000, and it's a scam. The trouble is, a lot of it is so genuine, isn't it? I get emails. I had one yesterday. Amazon, your Amazon Prime account or whatever is coming to an end. You've got to update it. Click here. I looked at the email address it had come from, some weird thing. It's nothing to do with Amazon at all. And of course, if you click here, like it says, you're then contacting them. They get into the system and all this business, and then they can buy stuff on Amazon with your money. Or something like that anyway. I don't know exactly how it works. So that's something else we didn't have in the old days to cause stress and anxiety. Then there's credit cards. Back in the 50s, the 60s, if you couldn't afford something, well, you didn't have it. And it was simple. You couldn't get into debt. Well, you could. There was hire purchase. You could buy things on HP, hire purchase, where you have to pay like 2 shillings a week or something. A man would knock on your door every Friday night, 6 o'clock. 2 shillings, thank you very much. Cross it off in his book. But you didn't have credit cards where they contact you and say, we've just upped your credit limit from £8,000 to £10,000. Oh, thanks very much. I'll go out, I'll go and buy this. Oh, let's have a holiday. Let's go to Greece for 2 weeks. Of course, it's all on the credit card, and then what happens at the end of the day? You can't pay the credit card. And there's massive interest. There was none of that. And I think this is why people these days, because of the stress, I mean, stress is evil, isn't it? Causes physical illness. I think that's why a lot of people, I mean, this is only my opinion, but I think that's why a lot of people these days, because of this massive stress, they do get ill. They're ill a lot of the time. Anyway, moving on, this episode's about the things I don't like. Well, I think I've mentioned that, haven't I? Credit cards, processed food, modern cars, don't like modern cars, don't like modern houses, new builds as they're called. As Trish said, why don't you list the things you do like? It would take about 30 seconds. My sister-in-law says that to me as well. If I'm moaning at her, saying, oh, I don't like this, I don't like... She says, Ray, what do you like? It would be a lot quicker just to tell me what you do like. It's become a bit of a joke in the family now. It's funny, actually. I do like a lot of things, but I don't like a lot more things. A family member the other day sent me something. It says, things I'm no longer interested in. Now they reckon this is me. Driving at night, leaving my house at night. Driving in the winter, leaving the house in the winter. Then the last one, driving and leaving the house. I suppose that does sum me up, really. I don't like driving. I don't like leaving the house. I used to love driving. Back in the old days, it was wonderful. Really liked driving. And I liked my car. Whichever car I had, I liked it. I'd polish it. I'd look after it, change the oil, keep it all clean inside, look after the upholstery or the leather, get special stuff to clean the leather, the wooden dashboard. I loved all that. I just don't like cars these days. They're all plastic, aren't they, inside, all grey plastic. They're horrible. I don't bother to clean it. We've got a couple of lads down the road. They go around with their car cleaning stuff and knock on the door. They only started doing this recently, and I said, yes, go ahead, clean the car. I pay them to do it. I can't be bothered. They did a complete inside and out on the car. They were out there for ages doing it, but what a job they made. That was money well spent, and of course it helps them, doesn't it? They're only, 12, 13, perhaps they're 14. They're earning money, which is good. And our car is all nice and shiny, and I haven't had to do a thing. Well, apart from pay them. I quite admire that, actually, because back in my day, a lot of kids did that to earn money. I did gardening for the next door neighbour. I go and spend a couple of hours weeding his garden, and he'd give me £0.50, which was 2 and 6pence. What's that in new money? I don't know what it is. You can look that up. 2 and 6pence. He'd give me a £0.50 coin for a couple of hours' work. He was happy. He had his garden done. He had a load of money, so he didn't miss £0.50. And I got some money to go and buy, sweets or fireworks, bangers, or a bag of chips down the road, Tanner's worth of chips. So we were all happy. I remember kids back then, like I was, sort of 12 years old, doing all sorts of jobs, cleaning cars, gardening, all sorts of jobs for people and getting paid for it. I think these days kids just go to their parents for money, don't they? They keep on about the bank of mum and dad, don't they? These days, to get a house, you've got to save up a massive deposit. You can only do that if you're in a good job, earning reasonable money, living at home with mum and dad, so you haven't got to pay rent and all that stuff, electricity and gas. So you're able to save, and then you can get your deposit together for a mortgage. But even then, you have to go to mum and dad, can you help me? Oh, okay, look, there's £5,000, all right, does that help? I don't like mortgages. I don't like banks. I don't like the winter. I don't like processed food. I won't go on because we'll be here all day otherwise. So you're thinking, well, what do you like? You know what I'm going to say, don't you? I like the woods. There's no one in the woods. Not if you go into the woods deep enough. There's no one there. No dog walkers, nothing. Except the animals, the birds, the animals. Lovely jubbly. Happy days. We've got to go out a bit more, actually. We've been so busy recently. We've not been to the woods. We joined Pulborough Brooks. We paid a yearly subscription thing to go there. We've only been that once. It's only up the road. We've not been to Amberley Museum for a few weeks. This is what happens with life these days, isn't it? We're both retired, and yet there's no time to do anything. I remember people back in my day that were retired. They go and spend a few hours in the garden, growing their vegetables or whatever, sit in the armchair, watch a bit on TV, perhaps do some decorating, a bit of painting around the house, clean the windows, service the car, mow the lawn. It was relaxing, pottering about in the garden, relaxing, pottering around the house, doing a bit of painting. Whereas these days it's all a nightmare, it's all manic. What are we doing tomorrow? Oh, we've got to be there at 9, then after that we've got to be over there at 10:30. Oh, then don't forget so-and-so's doing this, we've got to help out with that. It just goes on and on. I'm often telling my son over there in North Carolina, relax, don't get stressed. He gets stressed with work and with everything, like people do these days. But stress is very bad for you. Chill out, put on a bit of music, open a can of beer or a bottle of wine, smoke some cannabis. No, I can't say that. What am I talking about? Smoke cannabis? Stone the crows. I mustn't incite to drug taking. But it is important to relax, though. So that's another thing on the list. I don't like stress. I don't like anxiety. I don't like worry. I've never been a worrier. In fact, my dad, he used to think that I was uncaring, couldn't be bothered. because I didn't worry about things. He thought I didn't care. It's not that I didn't care. It's just that I wouldn't let something worry me, stress me out and get all anxious about it and make myself ill. Get a headache and goodness knows what. I wouldn't do that. He was a worrier, a big worrier. I suppose you can't help it. If you are a worrier, you can't help it, can you? The weather has improved slightly. It stopped raining, which is good. The wind is... Oh, look at the flag. Wind from the east. That's a bit of a change. Normally from the west. It's not too cold out there. I think it's about under our patio roof. It's probably about 20, something like that. So it's not too bad, and the rain has stopped. Email me if you want to. raiserants@protonmail.com. Do you get stressed? Are you a worrier? Some people aren't worried at all. Other people worry themselves silly. Which are you? raiserants@protonmail.com. Be good to hear from you. It's coming up to lunchtime, and as always, I am starved, so I shall have to end this fairly soon. Just another email here from Terry. Hello, Terry. Talking about nicknames. Now, we discussed this, didn't we, some months ago? Was it nicknames? I think we talked about this. Unfortunately, Terry, I can't read out your nickname, what they call you at work, because it's rather rude. It's funny, but it's rather rude. I was called Quackers when I was a radio and TV apprentice engineer. Quackers after a duck on a children's programme. Trisha's dad, bless him, who's now passed on, he was known as Bat's Breath. Can you believe it? People called him Bat's Breath. Well, Trisha and her sister called him Bat's Breath. I think one or two other members of the family did as well. Bat's Breath. I mean, that's not very nice, is it? I had a friend, he's passed on now. He was known as Toothless Brian. Why toothless? He had one tooth at the front sticking out. That was it. One tooth in his mouth sticking out at the front, and it was yellow. Sorry if you're eating, I'm putting you off now. Toothless Brian, we called him. One or two other people I've known over the years. I can't mention their nicknames either because they're rather rude. But nicknames are funny, aren't they? Quackers. Why was I Quackers after the TV duck on the children's programme? I didn't look anything like a duck. What is it? If they walk like a duck, talk like a duck or something, then it is a duck. Well, I didn't walk like a duck. Perhaps I did. I don't know. I don't know who started it. Someone called me Quackers and that was it. It went round the workshop. From that day on, I was Quackers. People could call each other by nicknames and rude names back then because people didn't get offended. Whereas these days, everyone's offended by everything, it seems. We didn't get offended back then. Stone the crows. The things I've been called over the years. If I'd been offended by all of that lot, I'd be a neurotic mess now. So that's something else I don't like. Add that to the list. People that get offended by the slightest stupid remark. I'm going to end here. Lunch is calling. Cheese and pickle sandwiches. Homemade bread, cheese and homemade chutney. How about that? Chutney. Trish made marrow chutney the other day, and she is about to make green tomato chutney. We've got a load of huge beef eater type tomatoes, and they don't seem to be ripening. They're not going red, probably because it keeps raining now. But she's going to make that into green tomato chutney. That would be nice. We've had that before, actually. At the end of the kind of season of tomatoes, a lot of them are still green. Rip them off the plant, stick them in the pot or whatever she does, and make chutney. Lovely jubbly. Back in the day, that's what the old grandmas did, isn't it? And mothers as well. But mothers didn't have a lot of time. They were busy baking pies and cakes and things to make chutney, pickled things, preservative, all that sort of thing. That was left to the grandmothers. They'd spend hours making all this stuff and putting it in the old Kilner jars. Do you remember Kilner jars? So you very rarely had to go to a shop and buy a jar of pickles, whatever, pickled onions, chutney, preserves, all this stuff, homemade jam, homemade marmalade, fantastic. I remember going into grandmother's pantry. They were called pantries then, weren't they, or larders. And in there on the shelves, there's loads of stuff in jars. Pickled eggs, I don't like those. Have you tried pickled eggs? They're disgusting, I don't like those. But she'd have shelves of jam and loads of other stuff she'd made. All proper food, you know, no hormones injected into the jam. I don't suppose they inject hormones into jam these days. But the bread back then that you buy from the shops, it had bleach in it, the white bread. Bleach, can you believe it? That's stopped now. I think that's been banned. You don't want bleach in bread? Struth. Of course, a lot of people back then made their own bread, as we do now. Trish makes our own bread. Admittedly, in a bread-making machine, not by sort of hand in the oven, you know. It's all done by the machine. But there's no bleach in it. There's no hormones in it. No weed killer and weird stuff like that to preserve it. I don't think they've ever put weed killer into bread, have they? But they do put weird stuff in, don't they? Preservatives. Into something which you would think is perfectly all right, a loaf of bread. Surely they haven't put stuff in that, have they? Oh, yes, they have. Stop it going mouldy. I think that's enough for this episode. I've enjoyed chatting to you. I hope you've enjoyed listening as much as I've enjoyed rabbiting on about various things. I look forward to the Sunday episode and, of course, the midweek message episode. Be good. If you're going to be bad, here we go. If you're going to be bad, don't get caught. Best thing is not to be bad. No, that's no good, is it? That's not any fun not being bad, is it? Be bad and don't get caught. Oh dear, here comes the thunder and lightning. Here we go again. What a lovely summer. Thanks for listening. Take care. Look after yourselves. I will see you on Wednesday with the midweek message. Bye-bye for now.